Hi, welcome to Verse of the Day. My name is Brandon Hathaway. I'm the preacher here at the Westside Church of Christ in Owensboro, Kentucky. I want to thank you for joining me today as we open up the Bible and study the Word of God. Today we are in Genesis chapter 40. Genesis chapter 40, and I'm going to start up in verse 16 through verse 19. Genesis 40, starting in verses 16 through 19. Here again, Joseph is still in prison, but he's worked his way up, and having favor of the Lord on his side, he is now kind of taking lead inside the prison, and the guard is putting people under his custody and putting them in charge of things. And so we have the butler and the baker who are thrown in prison. They had displeased the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had thrown them in there. And both of them end up having visions, having dreams. And so they are upset and sad, and Joseph realizes that, and so he asks them what's wrong, and so they tell him, and he brings out the point that, are not interpretations for God. And so he interprets the first one for the cupbearer, the butler, and things seem to be pretty good for him. And so here in verse 16, we read about the chief baker. It says, "When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for the Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head. So Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." The point I wanted to bring out from these verses is just because one person gets good news does not mean the other will get good news also. We got to realize that, here the baker gets overly excited hearing the interpretation of the butler. He's like, all right, he had a good interpretation. He's going to get restored. He's going to be a cupbearer again. He's going to, serve the Pharaoh, their Lord, and things are going to be good. And so he's excited and quick to tell him his interpretation, his dream also, to hear his interpretation. And it's not the same. It's not the same scenario. It's not even close. 3 days, you're going to lose your head and you're going to die. And so we need to realize that just because someone else is having some good news doesn't mean that we're all going to go through good news. And we have to realize that the Bible tells us to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. We have to realize that we're all going through different things at different times, and we try to find the good in everything that we can. And here it's just sometimes it doesn't go our way, right? But Joseph interprets. He asked the butler to remember him. At the end of it says the butler did not remember him. Good things came to him, and he just kept on going and forgot to make mention of them. And so, of course, we'll see how that plays out later on. But that's what I have for you today as we look into this, these dreams, these visions that the butler and the baker had. And just a reminder to us, even here, as God might send visions to people, they aren't always good news. And so sometimes as we read the Word of God, and we know that there are teachings on heaven, which is great, but there's also teachings on hell. And so we have to know that there's good and bad news that need to be shared. I want to thank you for joining me. Hope everybody has a blessed day. Lord's willing, I'll talk to you later.